writer! Have you taken your writing as far as you can on your own? Are you looking for a writing community to help you get it to that next level? Maybe a place where you can connect, get inspired, and make some real progress while writing, editing, and promoting your book. I'm super excited to announce my brand new Inner Circle, which is launching in July 2025. It delivers all the support that I normally reserve for my private one on one coaching clients, but it's in a small group format with other supportive writers to get you all the information you need to make your book the best it can be. It's just $199 a month, which is a fraction of the cost of my normal one on one coaching. Check out the details at susiebedori.com/inner circle. We're getting kickstarted early July, so grab your place now. Welcome to Show Don't Tell Writing with me, Susie Bedori, where I teach you the tried and true secrets to writing fiction, nonfiction that are going to wow your readers, broken down step by step. We're going to explore writing techniques. I'm going to show you a glimpse behind the scenes of successful writers' careers that you wouldn't have access to otherwise. And I'm also going to coach writers live on their pages so that you can learn and transform your own storytelling. Whether you're just starting out, you're drafting your first book, you're editing, or you're currently rewriting that book, or maybe even your 10th book, this show's going to help you unlock the writing skills that you didn't even know you needed, but you definitely do. I'm so looking forward to helping you get your amazing ideas from your mind onto your pages in an exciting way for both you and your readers so that you can achieve your wildest writing dreams. And you're going to also have some fun doing it. Let's dive in.
Today we have an extra special guest. I was so excited to get to catch up with Becca Puglisi, so much so that this episode is going to span over 2 weeks. Becca Puglisi is an international speaker, she's a writing coach, and she's the best-selling co-author of The Emotion Thesaurus and other resources for writers. The Emotion Thesaurus and its sequels has like 10 different things in it. You probably have, if you've been writing for a long time, you probably already have this on your shelf, so you'll know that she knows her stuff. Her books have sold over 1 million copies to date, and they're available in multiple languages. They're sourced by U.S. universities and are used by novelists. They're used by screenwriters, editors, psychologists around the world. We talk about all of those things in today's podcast and in both parts. She is passionate about learning and sharing her knowledge with others through her Writers Helping Writers blog and on One Stop for Writers. We're going to talk all about all those amazing resources in these episodes. One Stop for Writers is a powerhouse online resource for authors that's home to the Character Builder and the Storyteller's Roadmap tools. So you're not going to want to miss this one. We talk all about show don't tell, of course, my favorite topic, and also you can figure out how these tools all came about, what her methodology is, and how she teaches writing, and where you can get them for yourself. Okay, so the Emotion Thesaurus, and then later came the Emotion Amplifier, and I think that came later, but also there's these 6 other books, right?
There's the 10.
Okay,
Altogether.
10. Okay, 10 altogether. So there's the Emotional Wound Thesaurus, the Negative Trait. There's 2 Conflict Thesauruses. There's the Positive Traits Thesaurus, Rural Setting, Urban Setting. I think I'm missing a couple. I don't know.
Occupations.
Oh, the occupations. Okay. So how did you decide? So you mastered this and people were like using it. And it was this overnight, well, I don't know if it was an overnight success, but it was a success over time. And you were like, all right, how did you decide how to branch out and what topics to actually encompass? How did that all come about?
Yeah, the Emotion Thesaurus really did kind of take off fairly quickly. I mean, I remember us talking, because again, when we started, we wanted to just go the traditional route. That had always been our dream, to get the acceptance letter when we were writing our fiction. And we started seeing, as we were trying to get an agent so that we could get a traditional contract, we started seeing our content from the blog that we had shared just popping up here and there on other blogs. And we thought, oh my gosh, somebody is going to publish this before we're able to get through the door. So that's when we decided to self-publish. Didn't, know how to do that. Again, this was back in 2012 when it was still fairly stigmatized and a lot of negative ideas around self-publishing. But we figured it out. We put the book out there and we basically said to each other, you know what? If we could just cover our costs, well, they're really excited. And I mean, it just really did kind of take off. And so then we thought, well, hold on. This is something that we had a problem with and realized other people struggle with. What else could we write about? What else do we struggle with that other people might have a problem with? And the next logical thing for us was characters, because so much of when you read a story and it's not quite right, so much of it is something wrong with the character that's not developed well or not really authentic or realistic. And so we thought, okay, well, let's look at character traits. And so we started looking at positive and negative traits and how they develop, where they come from, because that's a big problem is people tend to just kind of choose traits and put them together. Maybe they're things that they admire or that they like, or they're things that they have themselves, but they don't make sense together or they don't make sense with the character's backstory. And so, we wanted to look at where they come from and how they naturally develop and let authors know about that so that they can figure out how to build characters that make sense. And then we talk a lot about how to show those dominant personality traits and show who the character is instead of, again, saying he was impulsive, showing that through the story. So those were the next two books that we published. And again, it's just this common thread with us of figuring out what help do we need that we can't find, and trying to provide that help.
And I love that you were just saying that people bring their own experience into it, because at the end of the day, writing is always personal. And if it wasn't personal, then you wouldn't be doing it, because you wouldn't feel that call. You'd be that person that says, oh, I've always wanted to write a book, and just never does it. If you're doing it, it's probably coming from somewhere personal. And if you haven't examined that, step back and see. I've been sometimes, the first thing that I ever do with clients is ask them to talk about their why. Why are you writing this book? Why are you writing this particular book? And this is from my mentor, Jenny Nash. Why are you writing this particular book at this particular moment in time? And if you can't answer that, you're never going to finish it, by the way. But a lot of times people will be like, oh my goodness, I thought I was writing about, Jimmy the squirrel or whatever, but actually that was my childhood, right? And
Right.
It sounds really cheesy, but it's true, because even if you're if you're listening to this and you're like, but Susie, I write about serial killers, I'm not a serial killer, that's fine. Of course, it doesn't mean that everything that happens in your book is you, but it is colored with your lens.
Yeah.
So whether it's something that you've done, something that you would never do, hopefully everybody listening to this would never become a serial killer, but something that you would absolutely never do, so you can see the flip side of it, or something that you wish you'd done. And again, I wish I hadn't have. Sometimes I'm impulsive. The character is impulsive, Becca. Susie is impulsive and she just used a serial killer, and now my example doesn't work very well, but let's just roll with it for a minute. Something I would never do, something I wish I'd done, something I wish I'd done differently, something that you've seen other people do. It's got to come from somewhere. So even if it's not your own experience, it is your own thought. So it does definitely come from somewhere.
That's where I think the more I study theme, that's where I think so much of that comes from. I have a whole ideology around theme and how we can better incorporate it into our stories and be more consistent with it. And I think that a lot of us need that help. But I think that so often theme just naturally comes out. And that's what you hear, people are analyzing classic literature and they would go back to the author and say, does such and such symbol this? And he's like, no, I never meant that, but it's there. And I think that that's so common, is the ideas that we have and the beliefs that we have and kind of how we see the world, those bigger ideas, they do tend to come out in our writing. And a lot of times the stories that we're writing are about those things without us really meaning to write them that way. And I love that you ask your clients those questions, because knowing that ahead of time makes the process, in my opinion, simpler and clearer, because you know where you're going and you know kind of what the story is about. And then revision is a lot easier because it's more front of mind.
It's true. And the more books that I work on with the more writers, and what I mean by that is multiple books with the same writer, oftentimes their views come through, even if their books are different. And on the serial killer theme, I have been working with a writer who writes about serial killers, and he's written urban fantasy about that, and now he's writing a contemporary about that. But his view of the world and that theme is often the same. And so even though he's changed absolutely everything about the books, that character development is often skewed in the same way. And it's a cool, like, it's a really neat way that he does it. And I didn't realize how much work you've done on themes, but that makes sense because we went back and forth on an article last year, maybe. I'd written for Writers Helping Writers, where I am a writer in residence. But I love writing with you. And that particular one was because I flip everything to the reader's perspective. And instead of talking about theme and what the author wants, it's like, what do you want the reader to take away from it?
Yeah.
What did you take away, right? And I love that. And you gave me some like, hey, this is how this ties into theme. And then we kind of collaborated on that part and tied it back to theme. Because it is theme, but it's kind of the reverse of it, right? It's what do you want the reader to take away, and being aware of what you're putting out into the universe and kind of acknowledging it. And to hit people over the head with it, you've got, 80 to 100,000 words to show different pieces of that, both positive, negative, like whether it's the theme itself or the anti-theme or the opposite of it, like whatever that is, and to reflect on that.
I love those stories that kind of, they just explore the idea. I mean, they're not telling you what's right or the right way of thinking about it or looking at it. It's, when they've got an idea and they have, maybe different characters that represent and have different ways of looking at it. And the protagonist is being influenced by these people and eventually comes around to his own way of thinking. But I love that way of just putting it out there and looking at it from different angles and letting readers interpret from it what they want to interpret from it. And, they can come away with very different ideas having read the same story because of their own, where they're at and their background, their own, maybe their moral code or, all of these things that play into all of that. That's always fascinated me. I really like that way of approaching theme.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, just being aware as the writer, because it's one of the things that I see the most often where writers go kind of astray, is they have a really deep reason why they're writing this book. And if they don't acknowledge it or understand it, they might write a different book. And then at the end of the day, they've written a book that they're like, I don't know if I like this book, or it doesn't do what they wanted it to, because they never stopped to think about what they wanted it to do. So that's a big part about being a book coach, is actually understanding what the writer wants. Like, it's not about cutting and me give you a cookie cutter template and here's how you write a bestseller. I mean, there's people out there that do that. That's not my process. And I don't think it serves the writer very much at all. And all of my writers, whether they do end up being bestsellers, and many do, or whether they publish it quietly and that's what they wanted, right? Whatever their goal is with that book, they're always excited at the end of the day because they ended up writing the book that they meant to write.
Yeah. I love it.
I hold their feet to the fire on that. Like, well, that's what you wanted to do. Are we changing that? That's okay. You could change it, but just be aware that if you go down this path because you've now listened to this writing advice on, how to write a bestseller, you're actually not doing what you thought you wanted to do. That right. Anyways, we're kind of off on a tangent here, but that's good, right? That's great. All right. So that was the negative traits, positive traits. What came next? Was it the emotional wound disorders?
Next
or one of the
was
others?
settings.
Okay, settings.
Because there wasn't at that time a lot of books about settings and writing settings. And we recognize that's another area where a lot of people get tripped up in terms of either sharing too much or sharing the wrong details. And just as we were researching it, we realized, oh my gosh, there's so much that you can do with the setting. I mean, you're not just painting a picture. You're using it to foreshadow or to characterize or to set mood or show contrast. I mean, there's so many things that you can do with the setting, and it becomes so much more meaningful and interesting for the reader when they subconsciously see that other things are happening with this description, that they're connecting dots. And that's what readers want to do. They want to connect the dots and kind of figure out how it all works together. And when we provide passages that could be potentially boring and they're doing double duty, it's energizing for the reader and it's much more interesting. And so we decided to do those two books. And it was, oh my gosh, it was massive trying to figure out narrow down the list. I mean, because there's so many settings that, you can do. And we wanted to go and see as many of them as we could, because that book is a little bit different in that the entries it's all about using sensory descriptions to pull readers in and to make them feel like they're right there and immersed in the scene. And so we wanted to visit as many of the locations as we could so that we could get those, what does it smell like? What does it sound like? What kind of tastes might there be here? And that
sounds so fun.
It was one of my favorite books to actually write, because my kids were,
I was going to say,
they were toddlers, and they were like 4 and 5. And I remember taking them. We went to the train station, and we went to the marina, and we went to the liquor store because that was on my list. I'm like, sit here, kid. Ooh, it's amazing. I mean, it was so much fun, just really looking and paying attention and getting into all of the sensory details in those places. I loved writing those books.
Love those mundane places that you just put. I mean, the liquor store can be an adventure, of course, but I was just thinking, if I was writing that book, or if that was assigned to me, I'd be like, well, now we're writing about Hawaii and France. And you're absolutely right. And to be a writer's child, my kids know, because we do travel with our kids, and we always have. And one of the games that I like to play is, they get to a new place, we're in a cab going somewhere, or maybe a rental car, and to get to our hotel, and they're like not loving life because they've just been traveling. They're exhausted when they were toddlers or in elementary school. And my game was always, all right, look around. What's different from home? What do you notice? Right. And it's just something. Now they're, in their late teens. My oldest is 19, and I still do that with them, and they'll do it because they understand that it brings them into the moment. Like you said, these techniques can be used for so many different things. Yeah. One of the ways to interrupt their bad mood is to bring them back to the moment so that they're not ruminating on, how long it's been since they had a muffin, or
get them out of themselves, right? Out of their
head. Get them out of themselves and be like, oh my gosh, like, wake up, guys. We're in, wherever we're in Europe, or we're in this foreign country, or we're in a different city. It doesn't have to be that far. We're in a different place, and the trees are different, and the vegetation is different, and the stop signs are different, and like whatever. And they kind of know what to look for because they've done it so many times. And again, it's practice. And what are the sounds and sights, and what are the people like, and what are they wearing? Is it the same? All the things. I don't know. I could do that all day long. Okay. So I love too that you talk about, it's not just a thesaurus full of setting details. It's teaching you how to use setting in an immersive way, in an interactive way, and in a different way that's more creative. Because we're not Spider-Man on the wall looking down and saying, well, there was a table and Susie's computer and the thing, right? It's like Susie adjusted the mic and it gave feedback, right? Like, I'm interacting with the setting. And so these books, not only do they have the thesaurus part, the dictionary, like whatever part, it's not a dictionary, it's a thesaurus, but you know what I mean, the reference part. But you also have passages at the beginning that explain these concepts and kind of give context for how to use them.
Yeah, we call it the front matter, even though that's not technically the right word. But every book has 40, 50, 60, depending, pages of instructive material on this is what this storytelling element is. And this is maybe some wrong ways it's been used. Here are some pitfalls to avoid. Here's how you do it well. Here's how it can be tied into these other aspects of storytelling that you may not have, made those connections. The psychology is huge, not obviously in the setting books, but we've learned so much about psychology in writing the books, because we recognized early on that so much of this, what matters is that what you're writing into your story, that it mirrors real life. So the characters, they have to, their character traits have to come from real places, and they have to go together in a sensible way. Emotions, obviously, there's a psychological component with emotions, following a certain continuum, so that you don't get these big overblown moments that don't make sense. Emotional wounds was like all psychology. And we actually had that one vetted by a psychiatrist, because we were so scared of, not being a psychiatrist ourselves, of not getting the details right. But so much of the books that we write are based in human psychology, because we want the things that we're sharing to echo all around us, and for us to be able to see to use those techniques and create characters and stories that other people just feel are so real. It's like it's familiar because I'm seeing myself in it, or I'm seeing the people around me, or, you know, the world at large and the culture and all of that. So yeah.
Yeah, I love that you're leaning into the psychology. And that's sort of where my experience has led as well, is into the brain science, right? And
Right.
sort of
Fascinating.
and things like Lisa Cron and Wired for Story, right? Like
Yeah.
there is this link between psychology and brain science and writing. Because at the end of the day, we've got this medium that is affecting people, and we need to be careful about how we do that, but we also want to explore how we can do that.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's a really, really neat thing. Okay, so you're talking about front matter, then the source fits. And so how does it work? Do we read this cover to cover and then memorize it and use it? No. How does it work?
No, we've actually had people reach up to us wanting to turn them into audiobooks, and we're like, what?
Oh, gosh.
Who wants to listen to that? I don't want to listen to it, and I wrote it.
Listen it.
Right. I know it doesn't make sense, but no, it's not really, you know, it's not meant to be read cover to cover. But we do, you know, most people get the books because of the entry portion, because it's got, you know, the emotion of the source, and they want to see the emotions, or they're writing about a certain character that has a certain occupation. And so they want to get the book so that they can read about that occupation and how to write it well, how to incorporate it and all of that. But the front matter is massively important because, again, it corrects misconceptions about that storytelling element, and it just expands and gives you more ideas about how that storytelling element can be written and used in the story to do so many more things than you thought that it was going to do. So, I mean, we always tell people to please read the front matter and then use the entry portion as needed. You can use it, you know, if you already know what you're writing about and you just want to get to it. I mean, you can go right to that, whatever it is that you're looking for, and get ideas. If you don't know exactly, you can use it as brainstorming, you know, that you're just flipping through and you're looking and, oh, that's an interesting occupation, or, well, I could do that setting. I never thought about putting my scene there, or whatever. So that's kind of how we tell people it works best when you read the front matter first and then use the entries. But of course, you could just use the entries and get a lot of what you want.
I was really quick to say no to that audiobook. And as you were talking, I could see it as an audiobook. And here's how, right? Because it's 40 or 50 pages, which is probably only an hour, which is terrific, right? So that 40 or 50 pages of front matter, and then the rest is just a PDF load, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, just a thought. I would buy all of them, and I would listen to all of them in your voice, teaching me each of those things. I would absolutely buy those. So a different conversation, because audiobooks are changing in terms of what types of formats they are. And certainly through Audible and other things, you can have a workbook that goes with it. You wouldn't want to read out all of them, obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah, to have that one portion of teaching in your voice or Angela's voice or whatever. And how did the conflict of the sources come up?
So we did emotional wounds, and then we did occupations. And then at that point, we're trying to almost like plug holes. Like, okay, so we talked so much about character arc between personality traits and emotional wounds and some other thesaurus that we've explored that at the blog that we haven't turned into books. But then we started thinking about plot. You know, we don't actually have a lot of resources that directly deal with plot. And so we thought, let's look at conflict, because conflict is needed in every story. You're supposed to have it on every page, is the adage. So how do we do that? So we just started exploring it and realized that it absolutely is a staple for plot, but that it so much contributes to character arc. It's like everything comes back to character arc with us, even when we don't want it to. So we have 2 books because, again, there were so many conflict scenarios that we could have used. We just decided to do a volume 1 and a volume 2. And we broke it into categories. So we've got like relationship conflict, and there's ticking clock kind of conflict, survival, life or death conflict. And so you can kind of look and see the category that you're looking for and see what might be there that's interesting to you. But it was, again, just really interesting once we started doing research and kind of figuring out where we wanted to go, because it's plot based, but it's character arc based, because the conflict that your character experiences is going to provide choice opportunities. And in those choice opportunities, they can go many different directions, but the direction is primarily going to take them closer to their goal or farther away from their goal. closer to overcoming their fear or their fatal flaw or whatever it is that they are having to deal with and struggle with, or farther away from dealing with it appropriately. That was very interesting to see it tying in kind of across the board in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So I have both the digital book and the hard copy of most of them. Probably I've got some holes. I've seen both. I see clients often, sometimes I'll say it to answer a Q&A on a webinar or something, and then everybody is holding up their thesauruses in the, like they're literally holding them up. Like when I mention it, they're like, I got that too. And I have all their cameras on. And maybe people listening are like, oh my gosh, I have a short stack, and maybe you're missing a few, go get them. But I see people, and this is not me, with them dog-eared and like sticky noted and all the things. And I know you guys love seeing those photos. Send those all to Becca and Angela.
Yeah,
for seeing them. But yeah, all tabbed. But I actually find, I mean, I do have the hard copies and many of them are signed. And so I'm going to keep them on my special shelf where all the books are signed. But the ones that I actually use are the ebooks because I can search, and I like to say I'm lazy, but I think I'm really efficient, right? Like I'm looking for something in particular and then I can search on it. What do you recommend? What do you see people using the most?
It's totally up to personal preference. I mean, we have the ebooks are really good because, like you said, they're hyperlinked. So you can flip immediately from, with the entry that you're looking at, click the table of contents, click the one that you want. And so you're not having to flip through the book and find what you want.
I don't even do that. I just use the search function.
Oh, well, that too.
Yeah.
So it is very easy to get where you're going if you have the audiobook. And also you have it with you wherever you go. So, if you want to go.
You just said audiobook. I think you're manifesting that this is going to happen. It's coming soon. Becca just announced it. No. Ebook. I love it. You've got it on your brain now. This is happening.
Book, if you are traveling, if you're going to a conference, if you're working at the coffee shop, you have it there on your computer most of the time, or at least on one Kindle. It's all there.
I think that's it. I don't write, especially not new drafts. I don't write at my desk, so it's never handy.
So that's
awesome.
Convenient for a lot of people. But then you have the people who they want to make notes and they want to, the new idea that they have for that emotion for their character, they're writing them on the page so that they're adding to the list, which I absolutely love because obviously we can't include every single thing on each entry. And so it just really depends on your, your preference and how you operate, how you process.
So what I'm hearing is buy both, buy all of them, go get them. The links will be in there. All right. Just before we go, we didn't get a chance to get to this in detail today, but I want to talk about One Stop for Writers because you also, I just love the way that you both think because as you're trying to provide as many tools for writers as possible. And your site, One Stop for Writers, is so cool with its story maps and scene maps and world building, the character builder and the storyteller's roadmap, all of those things. What's that site for? What's it about?
So I kind of look at it as the books have the information that you need, and then One Stop takes that information and creates tools out of it to help you create what you need to create. So we have a character builder there that I actually think unabashedly is fantastic. I'm sorry. I
agree. And actually, I don't know if you remember this because it was a lot. Like, when did this launch? I was a beta tester for your character builder. Because, well, number one, because I'm fascinated by it. And so when I saw the call, I volunteered. But number two, in my former life, I built software. And so I was like the one trying to break it. I was always trying to break it. And Angela's like, how doing this? My developer's like, she's giving really specific advice. I'm like, I'm trying to break it. That's what I do. Anyways, I think it's amazing. I'm a huge fan. Keep going.
Yeah, so it basically creates this tool where you can collect all the information for the various aspects of your character's personality and backstory. And it pulls from the information in all of our books. So there's a tab for backstory where you can brainstorm the character's wound, figure out what their wounding event is, and then look at the fears that are associated with it to figure out, okay, they've got this wound. So which of these fears that commonly go with this wound makes sense for my character? And then the lie that comes out of that And it all ties together. And then, okay, and I'm going to go to the personality tab now, and I'm going to look at their personality traits, and I'm going to figure out where their traits come from and which ones make sense based on their wounding event, what traits they might have. And then there's a motivation tab where you look at their outer motivation, what story goal might they be pursuing because they've got these problems and these issues. And then what is the inner motivation that they're struggling with? They're going to pursue this outer goal because they're trying to fill this inner void. And it's hyperactive, and it updates whatever information you put in and choose for these different elements of characterization. It populates it into a blueprint for your character's arc so that you can choose if it's going to be a change, static, or failed arc. And then it plugs all of that stuff in there and just gives you like a 3-paragraph outline of here's who your character is, here's what happened to them, here's their problem, and here's their story goal and how they're going to solve it. And it goes into the fatal flaw and everything else. So it basically takes, like 5 or 6 of our thesauruses, all the entries are there, and you can, look through and brainstorm and play with them and see what works. So it's taking our book information and creating a tool that you can use with that. We also have a story map tool, where you can map out your story's outline.
Becca, it's one stop for writers. Like a map site. That's all you got to remember. But check it out. There is a 2-week free trial, so you can check it out. And actually, your rates are super reasonable for the yearly membership. So highly, highly recommend it. Here's a tool, and I'm going to say this. This tool is for all you writers out there that tend to put all your backstory and your character development in your book and then have to pull it out later. This is a great way to put it somewhere where it's not in your writing, right? Because then you can draw from it and draw pieces from it, that you're not info dumping pages and pages of character development that you are like 500 words today and none of them are usable. Don't use those words because you want to pull them in one piece at a time. Do it over there in the tool and then bring it into your writing later.
Great idea.
Thank you so much for coming on today, Becca. I've got a couple of quick fire questions to finish us off here. How long did it take for you to write the first book? From that idea and the list to it being published?
Gosh, we started the lists in like 2005, just for our own writing, not headlines. And then in 2008, we added to them, putting up one at a time on our blog. And then in 2012, it took us about a year to take all of that information and turn it into a book.
Yeah. While.
It was a long process.
Right? It's awesome. So it was really honed. Okay. What was your first big break where you're like, oh my gosh, this is happening. This is unreal?
It has to be when we started exploring this thesaurus at the blog, and all of a sudden the blog just blew up. I mean, people, we wanted to have people do something where people could come back each week and see new content. So that's kind of why we went with that. And it just, every week there was just more and more and more. People were telling their critique groups and their writing partners about it. And that was when we were like, holy mackerel, something's going on here.
Oh, and a million copies later, right?
Yeah.
A million copies later. Okay, what's your best writing advice for writers? One thing.
Oh, I will say to take your time. We're living in this new age where you can literally, just press a button and publish your book. And I think that's most often is a huge mistake because a lot of times we're just not ready. And it takes, what's that saying that it takes 10,000 hours or 1 million words in order
10,000 hours to become a master or like a maestro in your field, whatever.
Yeah. And it's very tempting to try to short circuit that process and shortcut to right to the end goal. But it is a journey. It is a process. You learn as you go, and you only learn by doing. And so resist the urge to rush to the end and just take your time, study your craft, surround yourself with people who are in the field, maybe slightly, at different levels, but slightly ahead of you so that you can learn from them, and just let it take as long as it needs to take before you go that step. Because once you go and you're putting books out there, now it's really hard to get them back and to get readers.
Pull it back, yeah. And I mean, that's why I love that question, how long did it take you? Because yes, you could say it took you a year from, when you started writing or decided to make it into a book, but it's a lot of years of prep.
Yeah.
And they are amazing books because you went through that and because you got feedback and because you saw how people were using it and you honed it. I love that. Okay, where can we find you, your books, your blog, the One Stop for Writers, all that stuff? We'll put all the links in the show notes, but just let us know here really quickly.
Yep. Our blog is writershelpingwriters.org. And that's where, we've been blogging since 2008. There's a lot of material there that you can search and find probably an article on a lot of what you need, what you have questions about. And then onestopforwriters.com is where you can go to see all of the tools that we have.
Amazing. Thank you so much for coming on. I'm sure we'll have you on again at some point. And
Awesome.
Thanks for doing what you do for writers.
So glad to be here. Thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning in to Show Don't Tell Writing with me, Susie Vidori. Help me continue to bring you the straight goods for that book you're writing or planning to write. Please consider subscribing to this podcast and leaving a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever else you're listening. Also visit susievidori.com/newsletter to hop on my weekly Inspired Writing newsletter list, where you'll stay inspired and be the first to know about upcoming training, events, and writing courses that happen in my community. If you're feeling brave, check the show notes and send us a page of your writing that isn't quite where you want it to be yet for our Show Don't Tell page review episodes. Remember, that book and your writing is going to open doors that you haven't even thought of yet, and I can't wait to help you make it the absolute best. If you're feeling called to write that book, keep going, and I'm going to be right here cheering you on. See you again next week.